Richard also is speaking from the Competent Communication Manual. His project is number 7, which is research your topic, and his evaluator is Tom Terrific. Would you provide the objectives, please, for Richard?
Yes, sir. The speaker is to select a subject of importance to the audience, software development, that requires a large amount of research. The speaker is to collect information from numerous sources and carefully support points with specific facts, examples, and illustrations rather than just the speaker's own opinions.
Thank you very much, Tom. Richard has served as IT director at Covenant Seminary for 12 years and has recently taken more of a role in directing software development at the seminary. The speech this evening is targeted at software developers, but he believes that it will be of general interest to everyone. He's asking for 10 minutes, Madam Timekeeper. The title of Richard's speech is A New Case for Software Development. Please give a very warm welcome to Richard Hyder.
In 1862, Abraham Lincoln exhorted Congress, saying, "As our case is new, so we must act anew and think anew." Now, my topic for this evening is nowhere near as weighty as the one to which Lincoln was referring to. But there has been a change, and those living in the software development world must think anew and act anew. In the past, in the enterprise, IT and its software developers had a monopoly on software technology. We were the experts and our users knew it. But that's changing. More and more our users are coming with a knowledge of and an experience with elegant, intuitive software that they're using at home, and unbeknownst to us, a lot of times they're using it at work as well. Also, they're bringing with them their own devices. You've heard of BYOD. They're bringing iPhones, iPads with elegant applications. And the combination of these two things are causing them to come to us now with questions asking, why is it that the software you're providing me is so clumsy and inelegant? I believe that the developer Billy Hollis has summed up things well when he says that for the history of software, it has been good enough to make things possible. Now, success also depends on making things easy. So, how do software developers make elegant, intuitive, and even delightful software? In fact, how do they make software that their users will think is their magnum opus? Well, tonight I want to go over a few of the universal design principles that can help us get there. And I've divided those up this evening in several categories: aesthetics, principles having to do with simplification, with organization, direction, and finally color. First of all, general principles about aesthetics. It is well known that humans have a bias towards attractiveness. We enjoy and prefer attractive things and attractive people. The classic example of this is the debate between Kennedy and Nixon. Those who listened to it on the radio thought that Nixon had clearly won the debate. Those who watched it on TV, though, thought that Kennedy had won the debate. And that's chalked up to the fact that Kennedy looked slick and Nixon didn't feel well and he didn't look like he felt well. In addition to this, there's a thing called the aesthetic usability effect. Not only do we have a bias towards beautiful things, but we also tend to perceive that they work better. And so there have been experiments that have been done with two functionally equivalent pieces of software, one aesthetically pleasing, the other not, and the users believed that the aesthetically pleasing software was more usable when in fact it was just as usable. So how does this apply to application and software development? It applies because if we can develop attractive software, we've taken a big step to gaining our users' confidence and trust. So other principles. Principles having to do with simplification. The first is the Pareto, or the 80-20 rule, and this states that roughly 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. And this is used in a lot of industries, a lot of different ways. As far as software development goes, this is important to know because approximately 80% of the things that your users want to do can be accomplished with about 20% of the controls and functions that you are able to provide. And so we want to find ways to simplify and to surface these functions and operations that they're really wanting to do. One of the ways that this can be done is through a thing called progressive disclosure. And this is where we gradually reveal options and data as the user needs it. So for example, Microsoft Windows has this control panel for telling you how your security is configured. Most people, if they want to know anything about their firewall at all, they only want to know if it's on or not. And so that's all that they're provided. If you want to know more, if you're a nerd, you can click on a control and it expands to give you more information. Another simplification principle is called Fitts Law. Fitts Law says that the time required to rapidly move to the target area is a function of the distance to the target and size of the target. Translation, closer is easier, bigger is easier. And so you take a site like Lucid Charts, this is their homepage, and you can see that the largest elements on the screen are sign up and sign in. Most people, when they come to the homepage, all they want to do is sign up or sign in. They can do more here, but it takes a little more hunting to find those options. Another simplification principle is called Hicks' Law. Hicks' Law states that Hicks are generally less intelligent than the rest of us. Wait, no, that's not right. Hicks' Law is that the time to make a decision increases as the number of alternatives increases. So we've all been on road trips and we've all come up to this intersection and been paralyzed because there are just too many options. Even if I knew where I wanted to go, I get up to this intersection and now I don't. And the guy behind me is honking. So in software, an example is Twitter's old homepage. This is the old homepage. You can see it's pretty cluttered. There's a lot of options here. It's kind of difficult to figure out what exactly am I trying to do here. Well, here's the redesign, and there's really only two things that people want to do when they come to the homepage. They want to sign up or sign in. And so that's basically the only thing you can do unless you want to read the fine print, and it's down there. So those were simplification principles, design principles. There are also design principles having to do with organization, how things are organized on the screen. The first of which is the principle of proximity. Elements close together are perceived to be related. So one of the things you can do in coming up with design ideas is look at the real world. Here is an elevator control panel that Billy Hollis, who I mentioned earlier, provides. And you can see that all these different buttons and labels are about similar distances apart from one another, making it kind of difficult to tell at a glance which buttons belong with which floors. And in fact, if you look down at the ground floor button, you see how it's kind of rubbed off? People are thinking that that label is actually the button because this hasn't been designed well. Here's a better control panel using the principle of proximity. The buttons are close to the labels that they belong to. It's very clear which buttons belong to which floors. Another principle of organization, this one, the principle of similarity. Similar elements are perceived to be related. So if you look at these two calculators, the one on the left, you can see that all the buttons are pretty much the same size, same color. Well, you can't really tell the color here, but they are, except for the big plus button. Whereas the calculator on the right, you've got the larger buttons for the numbers, different shapes, different sizes, and you clearly have you can clearly tell at a glance that there are different buttons for different purposes. Those are organizational principles. Principles that I would say have to do with direction, directing the user. The first one is affordance. And this is where you provide visual clues indicating how an object is to be used. So a good example of this is the Google app for the iPad or the iPhone. Notice in the bottom corner here, it looks like the page is kind of flipped up. That's a visual clue that maybe if I, like in a book, if I flip the page, there might be something more under there, and indeed there is. It's a visual clue of what I should do with the software. And there are lots of other examples like this. Other direction principles. Constraints. It's disabling controls that shouldn't be used. Think graying out menus, graying out options. Feedback. And these directional principles are some that we already use quite a bit. So feedback, visual indications of what is happening. Think of the progress bar. Forgiveness. That's the ability to undo an action. So instead of harassing someone, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure, how about giving them the option of just undoing it if they make a mistake? And finally, the design principles having to do with color. Okay, I am going to confess to you that I am a colorblind person, and I'm not going to presume to tell you how to use your colors. If I did, you'd end up with a site or an application like this. However, I will say that there's some good tools out there to help you choose your colors. Cooler.adobe.com is one of them. It's a color picker. You say, this is the color I want, and then it tells you, here are the complementary colors that go along with that, or the like. You can even upload something from the real world and say, I like these color options, and it'll help you to use that then in your application or website. So those are some of the more important universal design principles. If you're interested in going to this any further, here are some of the resources that I used. Please email me and I'll send those to you. So again, the software world is changing. Developers need to change as well. It's as Lincoln said, our case is new, therefore we must act anew, think anew, and in this case, develop anew. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. As we did with the other speakers, we'll pause now to give you an opportunity to make a few comments about